Good morning. This is the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 110. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. What's up, brother?
What's going on, man? Do you still have a bicep?
Yes.
Do you still have both biceps? Oh,
Yes.
look at
Yes,
it.
I do.
So there is a bicep under the bandage.
Yep, there's a soft cast, a hard cast with soft stuff wrapped around it, and then the bandage. So, yeah, it's good.
Can
Feeling good.
you can you feel the pressure when you're in an airplane on like the area that was operated on?
Nope.
That's awesome.
Yeah, literally didn't feel anything. So as we're recording this, it's 1 week from surgery. Had the surgery last Wednesday, and yeah, man, everything's feeling good. I had the surgery on Wednesday, and it's been awesome, man, because I think we talked about on the last episode. It's been a blur because I know I've shared this with everybody since the injury is happened. Is on Monday when it happened, I took a very healthy dose of my peptides, which I'm taking TB 500. I'm taking a TB 500 BPC 157 blend, and I'm also taking AOD 9604 blend with MOTS C and tesamorelin, and took a really healthy dose of that, injected it right into the bicep where it was torn on Monday. Did the same thing Tuesday. And then when I got home from surgery Wednesday, same thing. Same thing on Thursday, Friday. And I really think that that has helped reduce the inflammation drastically and help aid with, the pain and the recovery. Because when I went in for surgery on Wednesday, there was barely any bruising, like almost no bruising. And the doctor was kind of shocked by that. And I told him what I had done with the peptides, and he's like, "Yeah, you're smart." And so that definitely helped. And then ice obviously has helped as well. And then Cowie Mayoral, who I did two platoons with, we're in Ramadi. I know we've talked about Cowie before. He was wounded on our deployment in Ramadi. He works with Mama Lee at America's Mighty Warriors. Um, and part of the things that they can do for combat veterans is when they have surgeries, help them get approved for HBOT treatment to help with the recovery. And they've they've had this for me for a while, anyways, because just for like a tune-up for with the TBIs and the other stuff that I had going on was just getting back in there and getting the treatments to help just with healing. And so it worked out perfect that he texted Amanda on Monday, I'm sorry, on Wednesday after surgery, and told her, "Hey, we got, Mama Lee and I have had these things for JP approved for a while. He needs to take it after surgery. It'll help out." And so Thursday, um, uh, I was able to go get an HBOT treatment, which helps with reduction of inflammation, speeding up the process for healing and recovery post surgery. A lot of medical insurance companies will approve HBOT treatment post surgery because it expedites the healing process and lowers the amount of time that you're having to do physical therapy for. So I did that Thursday, did that Friday, and then drove out to Amarillo Friday evening for a men's conference that I was scheduled to talk at on Saturday through Walking in Truth Ministries, who we do the pursuit events with. It was their first men's conference that they put together. And, was able to like be off painkillers all day Friday because I knew I was probably going to have to drive out there because looking at flight options with the weather, it wasn't looking good. And
It
then
was
a
not.
lot of them got delayed and canceled. And the next day, it was a thing. And so, yeah, didn't take a painkiller until I got there at night. And then the next day, spoke a few times at the conference. And, it was awesome. Really good conference that they put together. And it was really cool seeing a lot of Pursuit Brothers and guys from Double Five that were out there. They had some guys fly in for it as well. My buddy Jason, he's been to Pursuit. He goes to immersion camp, firefighter. I think he's actually also come out to a Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu event as well. Flew out for one, so he flew out for the conference. So it was good to see him. And I was just we can maybe dive into like what I talked about in a little bit. And it was cool to be able to do that and not be like in so much pain that I wasn't able to do it. It
Yeah.
was an inconvenience, I'm not gonna lie. Like Matt Russell, Troy, they knew like me going out there, like they're super appreciative. We talked about it when I got there. And I'm just thankful that I was able to like drive a 5.5 hours Friday, do that, speak Saturday, and then come home and be back Saturday evening. So then I took, my painkiller Saturday night and um yeah, so it's been good. Recovery's coming along well. And then Monday flew down to Mexico because I had a full day workshop there Tuesday. And then today flew from Mexico to Houston, dealt with the customs shenanigans there. That was crazy. The connection time that my app was telling me by the time I got off my plane from the gate through customs, back through security again, and then taking a tram to get to the other gate. It was going to be 77 minutes to be able to do that, and it took way longer than that. So it was
Oh, that
kind of a
stinks.
crazy day today, dealing with all that. Funny, not bad, obviously. I mean, these are first world problems, but I say that to like being able to speak all day yesterday and be on point and interact with the client. Went to a client dinner with them on Monday, talked through a bunch of stuff, did the full day workshop yesterday, worked through a lot of stuff with their company, and then go to dinner with them as well and still be engaging and talking with the client and not being on painkillers was awesome. So I was able to get an H-spot treatment Monday morning as well before I flew down to Mexico, and I'll be home tomorrow night. So
So,
uh,
so talk to me. What is an HBOT treatment? Like I've heard about this, but I don't actually know what that is.
hyperbaric oxygen uh, therapy or treatments, whatever they
Okay.
call it, HBOT,
Yeah.
HBOT. And it's where you go in a chamber and it's pressurized oxygen and it's bringing you down to depth. And you're at depth for an extended period of time, breathing in that oxygen, and it facilitates insane recovery and healing and everything else like that. And in March of 2020, when we all thought we were going to have like a 2 week break from not doing a lot of things,
Mm-hmm.
I reached
I
out to
remember
Mama
that
Lee
2 week
because
break.
what was that?
I said I remember that 2 week break.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the reason why I say that because it's comical.
That was this
Few
was well
reasons.
said. Yeah, I like that.
Well, Mama Lee had been trying to get me to get into treatments for a long time, but when you do your first initial treatments for real recovery and just healing and health, like you need to be doing it, one, if not two times a day, 5 days a week for 4 to 6 weeks. And my schedule never allows that. So I remember when COVID first hit, and those places, they had to stay open because it was medical and it was, you know, an essential thing. And I reached out to her and I said, "Hey, man, we lost everything on the calendar for a while. Not sure. I might have 2, maybe 3 weeks of no travel. We can do this." And she really wanted me to get down to Florida at the this performance center that they have down there that the foundation has partnered with. Um, to get a bunch of pre scans and everything because I have a bunch of buddies that have gone through it. Like Cowie went through it and he did all the scans at the beginning, and then you go through it, and then just the difference afterwards is unreal of just what it shows in the brain and the body. So that wasn't an option. So I just went and did those treatments, and it was unreal because at the time I was having some health issues. I was having some uh adrenal gland failure and
Mm-hmm.
like I was having a lot of like issues that we couldn't figure out what was causing it. And the doctors were confused. They're throwing out some things that Amanda and I were like, "Yep, nope, we're not going down that road. We're not partnering with that." Because I really just didn't feel like, hey, this is not what's going on.
Yeah.
So, anyways, timing worked out great. God's timing is always great. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. But that time in COVID, and I've said this on Jocko's podcast, this time in COVID that we had down, and then Mama Lee getting me into that HBOT treatment probably saved my life because I was I was going downhill fast and we couldn't figure out what was going on. Like, I mean, my body was like and we're shutting down. Like doctors were confused. I mean, Amanda and I were just a little stressed out, obviously. And like Leif and Jocko and the team were pretty stressed out. Like Leif, like to the point where I remember one time he's like, "Hey man, like you've got a good social media following. Jocko and I do as well in Echelon Front. Like if we need to like put out a post to ask for help for doctors or a GoFundMe account or whatever to get you like the treatment you need, like let's do it." And I was like,
Wow.
"Nah, let's not." Um, but that was kind of like how serious it was, and not a lot of people knew that. But yeah, being able to have that treatment was incredible. So I say all that to say is, if you're having health issues, Lucas and I talked about this before when we talked about me taking ownership over my testosterone and my hormones and the blood work and knowing and advocating for myself of like, no, I know things are not right. Let's fix it, and then educating yourself and doing research. And doctors are great, but don't just rely on doctors to solve your problems because not all of them know everything. So it's just awesome to have had that opportunity to get the treatments, and I'll get another treatment Friday when I'm home, when this episode comes out, in between calls and everything. And I was talking with my dad with all the pain that he deals with from his amputation and the phantom pains and the compartmental syndrome that he had going on his leg and all these issues. And I was like, "Hey man, you got to check this out. Like I know I've mentioned to you before, and I'm sorry I never followed up with you enough times properly, but like insurance should cover it for like preventative things so that you're not having to go to the hospital again, because how much does it cost insurance every time you go to the hospital for a few days?
Yeah.
And there's a possibility of you having a surgery or you have to have a surgery." So he's doing some research on that. Danny Ziem just had a pretty crazy surgery himself. I don't want to butcher what all happened, but it was so bad to the point where like Danny could not walk unassisted. He had like a
Oh my
walker and a
gosh.
cane because he was having like these paralyzing pains in his back and his hips, and he had to have an emergency spinal surgery, and which was really hard for him to be able to have to do that, work through that. But Cowie and Mama Lee, because he's a first responder, they also have a program through America's Mighty Warriors that's not just for combat veterans, but also first responders. So they partnered with some other foundations as well, and they got him a bunch of treatments. And he said it is unreal, to the point where like the doctors and surgeons were telling him beforehand, like, "Hey man, we just want to shoot you straight. Like this is going to be a rough surgery, a rough recovery. There are going to be things that you probably won't be able to do again in life. Like this could affect your quality of life." But because he's been so intentional and disciplined with his rehab and doing these dives, so they call them dives because you're going down at depth.
What does that
I
mean?
think
Like at depth, like they're creating the
pressure.
type of pressure that you would get like
Yep.
at when you're saying like at depth. Are you talking like 30 meters, 100 meters? Like what type of pressure are you under there?
I wish we had Callie or Danny on right now because they nerd out on all that stuff.
Okay, right
They know
on.
it. I don't remember all the details. Maybe later when you're talking, I could look it up on my phone and through some text from Cowie. But you go down to depth, and you're at depth for an extended period of time with that oxygen, and it just saturates your body um, with that. I mean, so that's the other thing. So in the SEAL teams, when we go through dive training, like going through buds, and then also in the SEAL teams, like when you're breathing pure oxygen for extended periods of time, and then you're doing it at depth, it is unreal what it does for recovery. And that's what guys would talk about. Like guys going through second phase are just physical phenoms because they're recovering faster than you could ever naturally recover. And then, then you go into third phase and you're just at this new baseline, and it's unreal. I mean, this has been around for a very long time. It just isn't well educated. It's not a well-known thing. That's why I really want to get, I think it'd be cool. Let's get Cowie and Danny on here to talk about it together because they can both nerd out on it. But I know that this treatment for veterans with PTSD and traumatic brain injuries, like it has saved their lives, like legitimately saved their lives. One of my buddies from the SEAL teams, he sent me the before and after scans of his brain. Bro, it didn't even look close. Like it was like 180 degrees. And, just when I say 180 degrees, Lucas, like you would not believe like the before and after images that he had because of those treatments.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
I'm looking up right now. Like, so I mean, this treatment in particular is so robust if it's part of a larger treatment plan. But um, it claims here like it saves limbs. Like this is something that's been known
Yeah.
about. The first place I heard about it was with baseball players that were trying to recover from Tommy John surgery, which is a surgery that they have in their throwing arm that a lot of times um, can save their career, but very few guys recover and get back to the level that they were at previously. And
Yeah.
normally it's like a year or two recover. But the way that um, this works and operates by creating super oxygenated blood and helping things move through, like this is super fascinating. I'm gonna try
Yeah.
not to nerd out on it too much while we're doing the podcast. I might bring this to episode 111 with
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
with all
Even
this
if
stuff. Yeah.
like I'd love to get Callie on and he's like super apprehensive for coming on a podcast um for his own reasons, which I respect. But if we just maybe just talked just about this and not his time in the teams and what he did afterwards and had Danny as well, like I think it would be awesome. But yeah, so even my dad, like he was looking into it and it's not as expensive as you would think it would be. And because there's more and more people doing it, it's dropping the price, which is awesome. And the foundation, they come in and they get a negotiated deal already because they partner with different groups that want to help the veterans and first responders. And then they buy a package to get the pricing even lower. And so that's why the foundations are able to do that for first responders and veterans at a high rate, um, which is incredible. But, I was talking to the clinic for my dad, and they said, well, even if, we can't take the insurance, like we offer packages and, you can always negotiate it. And then the other thing that you can do is you can also negotiate, like, hey, when's your slowest day of the week or times of the week? So it's like, oh, you're open at 7, but you don't have anybody here on Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 7 a.m. Cool. Hey, could I come in during that time at a discounted price? And so I was talking to my dad about that, and I didn't know that, but he's done that in the past for MRIs because like he would just
Wow.
call places that he's supposed to get an MRI and say, hey, if you have any last minute cancellations or a slow time, let me know. And then instead of it costing like 900 to 1,500 for an MRI, he's been able to get MRIs for like two, three, $400 before.
Oh wow. Yeah. So this is showing that you can go depending on where you're at. The type of pressure will be different because they don't want to change too much of what your body is used to, but it can simulate, depending on what your goals are, up to 1 mile below sea level or
Mhm.
1.2 miles above sea level.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, so there's the difference between 5,800 feet and 6,100 feet, something like that. From a depth of below to above. Yeah, that's a huge thing. And the way that your body responds to oxygen and all of those, and versus how you get out, and forcing one of the things it says, it forces gas bubbles that have been created from pockets of oxygen that have dissipated from the blood, moving them out. It seems like a completely bizarre and fascinating type of treatment, but you're saying you've seen good results from this. It's helping you out post surgery. It's helped you out in the past. So you're taking
I,
advantage of it. And folks who are recovering from surgery, sometimes if you're in that boat, your insurance companies will pay for it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and you can also negotiate with your insurance companies and talk to them about having it set up for as soon as you get done with surgery. And I learned about that the first time I went through because another guy was in there and he had just come out of surgery for something on his foot because he had really bad diabetes, and they were doing it so that he wouldn't lose his foot.
Dang.
Yeah, pretty crazy, man.
Yeah, that's absolutely wild.
Yeah.
All right, so you're doing the HBOT treatments. Recovery's going well. You were able to make the trip down.
To
Um,
Mexico.
well, no, before Mexico, down to this
Oh,
this men's
Amarillo. Yeah,
conference.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah. So what was that like? So this is the very first men's conference that Walking in Truth is putting on. You're one of a few speakers who's there. You did a couple of breakout sessions, from what I understand. What was that like? Because this is kind of a different. First off, it's a different style of event for them, but also a little bit of a different experience for you doing the speaking and the breakout sessions and all that stuff at a conference like this. What was that like?
Yeah, so it was awesome. It was not leadership. It was not Echelon Front. It was me talking about my testimony and my story and my faith. And it was cool being able to talk about my time in the military and tying my faith into my time in the military and and how that was, tested at times and the times that I got complacent with my faith, complacent with different relationships in my life. And so my big thing was just really hitting on complacency and how, complacency is going to creep in and, tying that into, the devil attacks us every single day, just like complacency is creeping in every single day and talking about putting on the whole armor of God daily, not just weekly, not monthly, but every single day. And so being able to talk and connect about like, hey, when we were in Ramadi, like at Camp Corregidor, we had to put our gear on every single day. Even walking from one building to the next, you had to have your full gear on, ready for the fight, ready for battle, because we were in the middle of it. No difference for us as men, and obviously women as well listening. But I was speaking at a men's conference, and so I was tying in, you know, these principles from the military and my faith, so that men could apply them to their own walk as husbands, as fathers, and just as men, to be stronger and bolder with their faith. Um, and so it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. First time getting to really do something like that at that level.
Yeah, so compare it to like the normal kind of keynote that you would give at an Echelon Front event. Like, are you able to use some of the same like preparation strategies, or does this seem like it's such a
Yeah,
different
the
thing that,
preparation is the same for sure.
okay,
It's like, hey, what stories do I want to tell? In what order? What are the tie-ins? How do I connect the stories? Where's the arcs to the stories? Um, and I kicked it off with what I've kicked off a lot of my keynotes with is, explaining my story, like as a kid. But, unlike any of my other keynotes or workshops, I was able to talk about like, hey, as a young kid, I was saved at a very young age. I was in the church from the moment I was born. I was baptized in the Holy Spirit at a very young age, being able to talk about that and what that was like as a young kid, young man growing up, what it was like going into the military. Um, and then, the thing I always talk about, or not always, but most of the time is, hey, ever since I was a little kid, I want to be a Navy SEAL. And then just talking about how God had put that on my heart. And I had felt like that was what I was designed to do at that moment in my life. Um, it was the first time doing it. As I looked back right afterwards, I was doing a debrief. I'm like, I wish I would have said this, or I wish I would have said it different, or I wish I would have done that. And so, one of the things that I want to do in the next week or so after everyone kind of like settles down is get with Troy, Matt, and Jared, and just ask them for feedback and do a debrief. And then also Isaac Tao was there, Justin Anthony, and a handful of other guys from Double Five, and just be able to talk with them and say, hey, you've heard my keynotes, my workshops before. Obviously, this was different. What feedback do you guys have for me? And just kind of go from there.
that's pretty cool. So did they record it?
No,
Oh, that's a bummer.
I know. I thought about that afterwards. I'm like, man, I
Yeah,
wish
man,
I would have had that recorded,
no
at
joke.
least an
That'd be cool to
audio
have.
of it.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, our buddy Jeff Blaine was there, and
I like Jeff.
dude, he's such a good human, and
And to be so big, he's so genuinely friendly.
it's
It's kind of
scary.
funny. Yeah.
It's actually like I don't mean scary in a bad way, but it's just like, man, he's such a big, strong, like capable man, but he's
Yeah.
just so
Absolute
every
monster
time
on the
he sees
mats.
you,
Yep.
he's like, "Hey man, it's so good to see you." And he like gives you a big hug and puts his big, massive grizzly bear paw hands on your shoulder and holds them there. And I'm like, I feel like a little kid right now.
Uh-huh.
But,
Yep.
but you know what? You know what? As I was saying that, I now understand like just that instant connection I've always had with Jeff and just how I love him like a brother.
Yeah.
You know who else used to do that to me all the time?
Seth Stone
Yep.
called it.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of like who are other just giant humans that were influential in your life, and Seth Stone was a really big guy from all the pictures that I've seen.
Big head dude. So his brother Alex showed our buddy Jackson from Jocko Fuel a a picture of Seth's hands, like a post that he made on Instagram of his war hands,
Hmm.
and his hands are. I mean, I'll bring it up. I'll send it to you in a second, but it's just like crazy. And Jackson responds and goes, "Bro, his fingers have biceps on them." Oh.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so great event there. Unfortunately, I had to cut out right after I got done speaking because I needed to make it home. Just let the arm rest, and I had to take care of some stuff before Mexico and some other appointments that I needed just to square away on Sunday and Monday. But yeah, that event went from Friday evening till Sunday afternoon.
Right on.
And again, I'm bummed that I had to leave when I left, but I'm thankful, man, that I was able to go out there. And I was a little like frustrated driving out there, just because I was just like everything, right? Like I'm just like just the timing and just there's so much to
Surgery
do and
sucks. The
just
weather
had
sucked.
surgery.
There's yeah, you got to drive so you can't take the pain pills. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a lot happening in a very short amount of time.
yeah. Less than 48 hours after surgery, I'm on the road, headed out. But it's all good, man. It's all good. Got some good podcast time, some praise and worship time. And one of the things I like to do sometimes is just drive with no music, no podcast on and just be there in my thoughts and just filter through things, think through things. Yeah, so it was good.
So what when you're driving, let me ask a personal question to you. What are you like? What are you listening to? Are you listening to Jocko's podcast? Are you listening to our stuff? Because we listen to our stuff and kind of critique ourselves and figure out, hey,
Yeah.
what things do we want to change? We also both listen to the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast for similar reasons and to
Yep.
try and make sure that we're always improving in those areas. What podcasts are you listening to that aren't affiliated with those three that you have some kind of direct connection and involvement with, as well as the Lead Win podcast with Jamie and Leif? Like, what other ones do you listen to?
Yeah, I was gonna say, well, Jocko podcast,
Yep.
JBL podcast,
Mm-hmm.
Lead
Lead
Win,
Win. Yep.
Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu. Sean Ryan, like I filter through his
Okay.
and I'll see like different. I haven't listened to all of his, nor will I probably ever be able to because he has so many.
Yep.
Um, but I love Sean Ryan's podcast. I love the guests, the topics that he has. And so I've been really trying to dive into the Sean Ryan show as
Yeah.
much as I can.
He's had a
Uh,
really interesting faith journey that he's been really open about the last probably close to a year. That's been pretty interesting to follow.
yeah, it's been really cool to watch that. And then, sometimes I'll listen to like an audiobook. Um,
Like high fantasy novels. You listen to like Lord of the Rings or the Stormlight Archive, or no? That's really not your speed, huh?
and this has been the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 110. Peace
Okay,
out, nerds.
if
No,
you're
I'm just
listening
kidding. No.
to if you're listening to an audiobook, like what are you listening to? Is it something that's kind of in the same vein of like leadership stuff? Are
Yeah.
you listening to I imagine that listening to somebody's um like listening to another veteran's memoirs would be a little strange, especially like somebody who was in combat around the same time as you. But you guys also quote a lot from About Face and from other books of veterans or former military guys that have written things from World War II and previous to that. So, are those things that are on your list as you're like traveling down the road?
Yeah, sometimes, and like most of like different business books that I want to read, but I'm like, I've got a bunch of books on the to-do list, and so I'll listen to different just business books, leadership books. I'm looking forward to listening to Dave Burke's book, The Need to Lead.
Is he reading it?
No, so I'm really looking forward to listening
No,
to.
yeah. Is he, because Leif and Jocko read the chapters in their books? Is Dave doing? Did he do the audiobook for his, or do you know?
I think so.
That would be,
Don't quote me on that
yeah.
one.
I'm gonna go look him up on Audible right now and see
But
if he's the reader.
also the Jack Carr books are awesome.
Yeah, those are great.
Yeah. Sometimes, you just need a little 90s gangster rap. No, actually, I'm not gonna say no to that. I
Well,
do
yeah, for
sometimes
sure.
like,
Everybody's got to.
but yeah, just some, I like oldies, man. I like the Beach Boys, classic rock, and then I just like all different types of country music.
The
So,
Need to Lead. Let's see who is.
but I'll get to a point while you're looking that up. Like, I'll get to a point where
It is
I,
narrated by Dave Burke and Jocko Willink.
oh, awesome. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, I was about 98.7% sure on that one. Um, but I think it's good to just honestly shut off all the noise. That's one of the things we talk about at Echelon Front at the FTXs is your ability just to shut off the noise is really important.
Hmm.
Just turn off the outside noise, be in silence, just think like take your thoughts captive, filter through things, think, work through things. Yeah, there's sometimes like I'll be driving and I'll be thinking through stuff and I'll open up the notes of my phone and I'll just add voice memos to it of like things that I'm thinking about. And then I'll get back to them later and I'll, type them up or translate them over. But man, I've been able to work through some stuff just being in silence. And I think it's good for you to learn to be comfortable with being in silence and just being with yourself and your thoughts and, thinking and questioning things and working through things and then but you got to capture those. It's like journaling, but
Yeah.
I just do it while I'm driving. It's mental journaling.
Is is that something that, because you do a lot of CEO coaching, and I don't think we've highlighted that quite enough whenever we've talked about these kind of things, because you kind of the toolbox that you help CEOs or C-level suites,
Yeah.
people like executive coaching, you kind of help them assemble this toolbox of things that they need to have, whether it's in leadership, but also, when it's in things like, individual processing of the problems and things that you have, so that you don't end up in this place like one where you're complacent, which we talk about a lot, is
Mhm.
fighting complacency, going to war with complacency. But this other where you kind of get to this spot where you've overanalyzed every bit of everything because you've
Yeah.
spent all of this time in your head, that now you're walking into a situation where you believe you've got the ability to sort of have this. You've got this Nostradamus type layout of you already know what's happening before you go in there, which isn't true because we're so terrible at mind reading and predicting other people's behaviors. Like, how do you help people like find that middle ground in that space between those two things?
Well, you know, so when I do calls, whether it's monthly, biweekly, or weekly with different people, I have my notes that are just continuously running that I'll ask some questions, we work through stuff, and then I'll say, all right, hey, for this next week or next 2 weeks or next month, here's what you need to be thinking about and focusing. Like, hey, you got to write these things out. You have to come up with a plan. You have to track things. It's like what Jonathan and Ann at First in Nutrition teach people to do. Track your calories, track your macros so that you know what you're working off of. And as a leader, as a human, as a father, husband, wife, mother, if you're trying to progress and grow your capabilities, you have to be tracking what you're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's the nice thing I like about First in Nutrition is like I know how to do all these things. Like literally everything they teach us, I've known that. Jonathan and I have talked about this. Like I was doing that as a young age, high school and the SEAL teams. But the thing I liked about First in Nutrition was the accountability. of like, hey, I need to track these things. I need to record them. I need to log them, report them. It's the same similar thing that we do with companies when we do an LDAP with them or executive coaching is like, hey, what are we tracking? It's really hard to measure something if you're not tracking it. And, I think of that also from like land navigation. And I've given business leaders this example before. It's like, hey, it's really good to know where you want to go. Like, hey, that's the destination. That's great. But if you don't know where you're at right now, how are you supposed to create a path to get there? In the SEAL teams, when we would do land navigation, one of the things that they taught us was to figure out where you're at. Because no matter where you get dropped off, you need to be able to figure out where you're at. Now, ideally, if you need some sort of a map, right? I'm not going to the extremes of like no map, no compass, no GPS, blindfolded for 17 hours. You don't know where you're at, find your way out. Like, okay, cool. That's whatever. We could figure that out. But I'm talking about like the most realistic thing is like train navigation and being put into a location. You have the terrain around you that you're able to read, and then look at a map, look at an actual map that has the contour lines on it, and figure out like, okay, cool. That look at the map. Okay, this is a ridge line. Okay, cool. That's a ridge line over there. Pull out my compass. Boom. What's the bearing to that ridge line? All right, cool. Mark it. Look around to another one. All right, cool. That's okay. That's that little valley and that peak. Okay, cool. That's, this degrees. Boom. Mark it. And then find another one. Mark it. And guess what? Where those three lines intersect, or if they make like a little triangle, you're in that area.
Are
Unless you completely screwed up
are you
your
talking
bearings.
about triangulating your position?
Yes, it is. And so
Because I have heard
as
that in a lot of movies.
yeah, so as leaders, I believe you. As
Thank
leaders,
you.
we need to be able to triangulate our location before we can move forward. Because if we don't know where we're at and we start moving in the wrong direction, that can be a really bad thing. Desire and capabilities are two different things. We've talked about this a lot. And so I have to understand, hey, here's where I'm at. This is where I'm trying to go. What's my capabilities? What's the route that I'm capable of taking? And then let's go. And so that's something that I do work on when I'm doing coaching calls and also like half day, full day workshops if it comes up in the first initial one. I've briefly talked about this at the muster before. I think it's something I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into in the
Yeah.
future, because I think, it really ties into like understanding your mission and knowing your mission, of like what you're trying to do in life. Like you can't go do it if you don't know where you're at. And that's why honest self-assessments are really important. So yes, long answer to your question is I do encourage people to track what they're doing so that we can review it and make adjustments as needed.
Yeah, and there's something to that figuring out where you are in the situation.
Hmm.
Um, I think when as leaders we have a specific situation that we're handling, we want to find the solution to the situation instead of figuring out like where we're at. But when we figure out where we're at, one, we can find out what things we can take ownership of, which is
Hmm.
probably the most important key to any of this, is because we figure out whether or not we are involved in causing the problem, or if from the outside looking in, like what we need to take ownership of is helping to find the solution if it's an interpersonal thing or something like that. And then the other thing is, if we figure out where we are, we spend less time trying to predict the behaviors of everyone else, and having those mental battles. One of the things that a lot of people, when I've heard you talk to them, and especially at some of the events like the muster and those kinds of things, whenever there have been role plays that have happened, that people have this idea, and you've talked a little bit about this before, like when you listen, you have to listen intently to somebody when you're building a relationship with them, or when you have a relationship with them. You can't just be thinking about what your response is. But when we're having these kind of silent moments where we're the only narrator, we're kind of making up and putting words into their mouth based off of the things that we know about them, or that we think we know about them,
Yeah.
or that we think that they've done in this situation, whatever that is. That when we really take a moment to assess where we are, it changes our perspective of where everything else is, where we may have been looking at the situation backwards or from a different point of view that we didn't actually realize that we were coming from, or that we've, maybe we've been defensive in a situation where we shouldn't have been. And those types of things completely change the inner dialogues that we'll have whenever we are assessing an issue and that type of thing. And this is where, I want to get back to the talk that you gave at the men's conference. And when you're looking at something like not being complacent and putting on, the armor of God daily so that we can be better men, or, for our audience here, better husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, people, individuals, humans. It's so important that we triangulate that position and figure out where we really are. So what are some things that we can do? Like, what are some practical steps that we can do to figure out, like, hey, where am I, so that I can make a better assessment of, here are the 1, 2, or 3 things that I need to do in order to maybe not hit my goals, but in order to take that next step towards being a better person. How do I do an assessment and figure out where I'm at as an individual? And then what's the best way for me to look at next steps so that I can be the person I want to become? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so obviously, I mean, this is something we could dive really deep into, but I
Right.
know we're getting ready to close it out. So I just want to give you an answer to what you said so that we
Yeah,
can
yeah, because this
dive
is
a
an
little bit
episode.
into it and we
Yeah.
can hit it a
Yeah.
little bit more next time, right? And it's just the other part is I want people to be able to figure this out on their own, because then you have that ownership. And um, the first thing you have to do is you actually have to ask yourselves, okay, hey, what are 2 to 3 problems I have in my life right now, personally or professionally? And this is something that Cody started doing at the FTXs and some of his workshops that I stole from him. And a lot of us at Echelon Front do it, is like yesterday when I started off the full day workshop with my client down in Mexico, was I asked them to write down 2 to 3 personal or professional problems, and then what's the root cause of those? At the end of the day, we address and we ask them, what is really the root cause of the problems that you wrote down? And what did you take away from this training to apply to those problems? Well, usually people at the beginning, when they write down their problems and the root cause, it's something or someone else. And so when I'm coaching somebody and working with them, I let them do that. And then we talk about it real time. And I say, okay, through the lens of extreme ownership, what's the root problem? And so we as individuals have to look at this as a, hey, this is 100% on me. These problems in my life I have created or allowed to happen, and I need to create a solution. Now, are there some things that happen in your life that you physically had no control over? Something horrible happens and it's a big problem. Yes.
Yeah.
At that moment, we evaluate what solutions can you provide to the problems. The ownership is providing the solution. And so that's what we have to do first, and then evaluate the relationships. Okay. Hey, these are these problems that I have. What are some key relationships associated with these problems that I need to improve? And then do an evaluation and then ask yourself, okay, what specifically can you do to start improving that relationship or breaking down the silo? And that's, I mean, that's all I'm going to go with somebody originally, because that's a lot right there.
Yeah.
And throughout the next week or 2 or a month, like that's what they're focused on is the relationships associated with the problems, fixing the relationships, providing solutions to the problems, and tracking these things as they pop up. And then you also need to be tracking your wins. Like, what are you doing well? Like, what's working? What can you duplicate? What can you now take and delegate down to your team and teach them and empower them to do the same? So,
Yeah, dude, that's a That's massive, because if we can figure out how to do it with two or three problems that are professional or personal, then we can see pretty quickly how this applies to everything that we've got going on in our lives.
So I didn't talk about this at the men's conference. I talked to a few guys offline about it, and it's something I want to bring up next time I am speaking in this type of an environment. But it's like, okay, hey, you've gotten complacent in your marriage. It's just not what it was like. You're lacking intimacy and connection with your spouse. What's causing it? Walk me through your day. When you come home, what's your day like? Oh, you crack a beer right away, or you pour yourself, a whiskey on the rocks and you start drinking as soon as you're at home. Well, okay, there's probably a root cause to your disconnect with your wife and your kids because you're numbing whatever pain you have, whatever burden you're carrying, whatever shame or unforgiveness you're carrying, you're numbing it with alcohol or drugs. And that's causing the disconnect.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been watching
Corn.
videos that you
Yeah.
shouldn't be watching.
Watching corn.
Yeah. And you wonder why there's a lack of intimacy between you and your spouse. You're ruining your marriage. You're literally like, there's studies, you and I have talked about this, that
Mm-hmm.
show like when you watch those types of videos, it causes damage to your brain.
Yeah.
So, okay, how do we remove that? How do we surrender that? How do we give that up? So it's just identifying problems, figuring out what the actual root cause is. How are you connected to the root cause? What habit? So here's a simple answer. What habits do you need to create to change your behaviors and tendencies for the better?
Mm.
And then also, what behaviors and tendencies do you have that are good and strong? And how do you strengthen them?
Yeah, like this is a whole episode in itself, but I do think, for those who are watching and listening, if you're watching on, YouTube, or you're over on Spotify, if you're at a place where you can, comment, leave reviews on specific episodes, like what are some of the things that you guys are struggling with? If you're on our Instagram page, if you're following at JP Dinnell, or you're following me at Lucas Pinkert, or you're following the JP Dinnell podcast, like these are the things, those habits that you have that you know, that are standing in the way, negative habits. What are the things that you're doing well? What are the habits that you need to create? Like these are the things that as a community that we can work together in order
Yeah.
to make each other better in those places. If it's a nutrition thing, go check out the people over at First in Nutrition. Go to firstinnutrition.com/JPpod. They'll be able to give you 4 free weeks of nutrition coaching. If that's the thing, is
Yeah.
that, then, we've got resources for it. If it's a,
Dude,
if it's,
Anthony, you're having problems with substance abuse?
yeah,
Like, reach out to Anthony. Like, that was an awesome episode.
yeah, man.
Unchained Fitness, like, bro, that dude is like changing people's lives. He's gonna give you the freaking roadmap.
Yeah. If
I
it's
I
a,
personally know of one person, sorry to interrupt you,
no,
that
you're good.
reached out to me because they reached out to him
Wow.
because of that episode. They reached out to him, and this guy was like, "Hey, like, I'm gonna talk to JP about this. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. Like you're saying you need help. I want to help you. You're saying you want JP to help, but hey, we got to connect the dots." And it's cool because then that person called me and it was like, "Hey, man," and then we worked through some stuff. Um, Sorry to interrupt
No,
you, but
no,
I
you're
was
good.
all
Like,
fired up about that.
absolutely, man. And like all of this stuff, and this is, kind of one of the things I'm drawing our attention towards, is like all of the things that we're doing in the community building that we're doing with the JP Dinnell podcast and with Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu and all these things is meant to feed one another so that each of us is better when we come to the end of the day. Like, you got a discipline issue, you're having issues with, staying on target with, your Bible study or your faith. Check out the stuff at Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu, the devotionals that are there, the Jesus and Jiu-Jitsu podcast that comes out every Tuesday. Check that out. Go to one of our seminars. We got one that's going on tomorrow in
Tomorrow.
DFW over in Plano. As this episode comes out, with Carlos Henrique, who's doing the seminar, the current UFC BJJ lightweight champion, and then multiple time Grammy nominated artists, Christian rapper Tadashi is coming and sharing his testimony. Like if you want to get in on those types of things, you want to go to a place that gets you a little fired up and inspired, so that you're riding a little bit of a high going into the holiday season, so that you're ready to do those disciplined things. Go check out a Jesus in Jiu-Jitsu event. Go to jesusandjujitsuusa.com and go check out the things that are going on there when it comes to the little self-care things. We don't often think about how big a change that can happen with our own personal confidence and self-image with something as simple as like, hey, you know what? I'm using beef tallow from Little Cattle Co. in order to just try to keep my skin moisturized. Or I'm using, the anti-age cream or the anti-sun care or the after sun care, those kinds of things when it seems like really simple, like almost non sequitur things. Like, how do these things connect? Well, you know what? I got a wicked sunburn and I know that this is going to bother me for the next 5 days. Well, there's stuff that you can go to, you can go check out. That's
Yeah.
part of that. And,
And
and that's it.
and something like deeper than that, which yeah, that's great. Like we all want to feel better, we want to look better. Like we have had, I don't even know how many people, at first it was just women, and now it's men as well,
Mm-hmm.
who were on medication for skin issues
Yeah.
that are now no longer on medication because they're using the little Calico tallow products, the skin, you know, products, and they're not on their medicine. And it cleared up all of the stuff on their face and their body. Um, Again, it's just, I know we're like closing out and we're tying in things, which I like, but it's about taking ownership over these things in your life.
100%.
Take ownership. Like, I know you and I have talked about it before. You're getting ready to talk about, Jocko Fuel and Origin and, just supporting Origin and Jocko Fuel for the supplement side. But, we've talked about this before. Like, that's why working out and eating healthy was so important to my parents because they knew they would perform at a higher level with their jobs and as parents and as spouses. And that's why health and fitness was a non-negotiable for our family growing up.
Yeah.
And if you're dialed in with those things, for my dad doing construction and doing dangerous jobs at times, he was safer because he was healthier. And we don't even want to open the door for our first responders when it comes to that, because that's a big thing right now. First responders are now being very vocal amongst themselves of, hey, we need to be at a higher level. We
Yep.
need to have higher standards, and we will be safer and more efficient and more effective with our capabilities if we're healthier, stronger, and just well balanced as humans.
And here's what we need you to do, first responders, especially our law enforcement. The joke about you guys and donuts has gone on for way too long. We need you to replace your donuts with Jocko Fuel. So go to
Molt.
Jocko Fuel, go to jockofuel.com, order yourself a case of the RTD Mulk, use code JPPod20, save yourself 20%, and take a picture, post it on Instagram, tag us in it. Let's make Mulk. Let's make Mulk the new donuts.
And before it sells out, go to echelonfront.com and sign up for the muster in Orlando in
Yeah,
December.
023 is
Yes,
coming
sir.
up.
Michael
So
Jordan's number. Let's go. You're shocked I knew that, huh?
I'm not shocked that you knew that. I'm shocked that I didn't think about it at any point until you just said it. That you came up with
Impressive.
the sports reference before me is, I appreciate that. This is one of the things I appreciate about you, Mr. JP.
Well, if Cody Gandy listens to our episodes still, he'll be impressed that I put that connection together as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So get to the Jumpman muster in
Yeah.
Orlando, and then we've talked around and about a lot of these things. We talked about Origin, we talked about Jocko Fuel, we've talked about some of the folks that JP met, some of the guys he worked with in the SEAL teams. If you want a custom gear package that the guys who have put this stuff into practice in the battlefield can put together for you, go check out Bruiser Arms. They got custom gear packages. They've got custom trainings and things that they're putting together. Go check them out at Bruiser Arms and give them a shot. Let them know what you want to do and see if they can't put together something that you can use as you are doing all of these other things to get you that last line of defense, protection, and security that you need, man. So with all that said, JP, you got any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, I don't know at what level the relationship partnership is going to look like between Bruiser Arms and Vortex Optics, but it's happening. Like it's getting official. We just outfitted all the FTX taggers for the Echelon Front field training exercise that we do with Vortex red dots.
I am, again, I'm willing to make the sacrifice to
I
run some
know.
prototypes
Yep. Yeah.
if you'll
I
just
know.
pass my information along. Just put me in a text with Mr. Vortex and
Yeah, but
let's
I
do
think that's
group
gonna be
message.
awesome. The
Yeah.
guys
A volunteer's tribute.
have been helping Leif build out Bruiser Arms with just the accounts and the gear and the packages and the sales and all that stuff.
That's rad.
These guys are absolute studs. I know I've talked about them before. Both 20 plus years, Austin PD, SWAT. I mean, these guys are awesome. But yeah, so I connected them with my buddy who's the president of Vortex over there and putting together some pretty cool stuff, which is going to be great. So, um, I mean, at the end of the day, if I'm going to close out with anything, is you know, um, control your emotions. I know everything we talked about can be tied into your emotions, but the reason why I close it out is, I got a lot of really cool messages from people on social media and text messages and calls after I posted the injury. And like I said last week, this injury is not that big of a deal compared to like other things in life and what it could be. And so I definitely like I've known that from when it happened, but a lot of people were just they're being very genuine with reaching out, and I was just very, very like just nonchalant with my response of just yeah, everything's good. Not 100% sure. Waiting for the MRI. Surgery tomorrow. Hey, surgery. And the reason why I share that is because I never fully knew what was actually going on until we got that MRI, until we had surgery. I didn't know, the doctor didn't know. So why freak out? And as leaders, as humans, as parents, as spouses, as kids, when we're trying to improve who we are, don't freak out. If you're not happy with where you're at, when you triangulate your location and you realize you're not where you want to be in life, freaking out will never help. Staying calm, thinking, collecting some information and data, coming up with a plan, and making a small iterative step in the proper direction is how you win in life. And you do that over and over and over. And eventually you might gain some momentum. But even if you don't, you'll be progressing in the right direction. And the momentum that you want isn't always the momentum that God's going to allow in your life. So you have to have some patience with where you're at, with where the things in your life are at, and trust the process. So we appreciate you guys listening. I hope this episode has been a reminder to go do the work that's needed, to put in the effort, to build your legacy, and to never settle. This has been the JP Dinnell podcast, episode 110.